Okay, let's dive in. Imagine for a second that your body isn't just, organs and tissues,
Mm.
but it's this complex system constantly broadcasting data,
Yeah.
like your own personal health data stream.
Yeah.
Invisible, maybe, but packed with information about what's really going on inside.
That's exactly the way to think about it. We're really stepping into the world of strategic biomarker testing and tracking, essentially learning how to tune into that stream.
And interpret it.
Right, interpret that powerful data your body's putting out there constantly.
And our mission here in this deep dive is to really sift through all these sources you've gathered. We've got articles, summaries covering everything from all basic lab work and genetics to the gut microbiome, and even specific companies and concepts. We want to pull out the key stuff, understand the different tests, what they actually measure, how they're being used, especially together, and what it all might mean for you, the listener, trying to optimize health or longevity.
Absolutely. And you'll find some really fascinating concepts popping up in these sources, things like figuring out your chronic disease temperature or your inflammatory age, or even realizing how your lifestyle can actually change how your genes work without changing the DNA code itself. That's where some real aha moments are.
Okay, so first things first, the why. Why bother measuring all this internal stuff? The sources really hammer home this central idea: you can't manage what you don't measure. Simple as that.
Right.
And it feels like that becomes crucial when you're trying to build a health plan that's genuinely personalized,
Yeah.
not just generic advice.
Precisely. One source paints a pretty stark picture of this health spectrum. It talks about a serious health crisis, saying very few Americans are actually optimally healthy.
Wow.
So this testing, it isn't just about finding disease. It's about knowing where you stand right now on that spectrum, your sort of chronic disease temperature, as they put it, and then having a map to move towards that green area of optimal wellness.
So it sounds like it's really about being proactive, right? Not waiting around for symptoms, but getting a sense of your internal workings, maybe at a molecular level.
Yeah.
Before things go sideways.
Exactly. That understanding lets you make really precise choices, tailored interventions.
Yeah, instead of just jumping on the latest trend.
Exactly. And two key things that come out of this are disease risk assessment and figuring out your biological age.
Ah, biological age. Not just how many birthdays you've had.
Right. It's about how well your body's actually functioning, biologically speaking. And the interesting part is it's potentially something you can influence. It's dynamic.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So if the why is personalized management through measurement, the next question is, what are we measuring? There seem to be quite a few different data streams mentioned.
Yeah, there are several layers. The foundation, you could say, is traditional lab tests. The basic blood panels we're kind of familiar with, wellness profiles, biophysical tests.
Standard stuff.
Standard stuff, but access is changing. Platforms like RPA Health are mentioned. They let you order from lots of different labs in one place. Makes it simpler.
But the sources also talk about much more specialized lab work, right?
No, definitely. Companies like Cell Science Systems come up. They offer things like the ALCAT test. That one looks at food and chemical sensitivities, often called intolerances now.
How does that work?
It's described as a gold standard test, looking at how your leukocytes, your white blood cells, react to different substances. The goal is pinpointing specific triggers so you can make targeted dietary changes to relieve symptoms.
Interesting. Very specific.
And they do other things too. Psyche for gluten GI issues, methyl detox for methylation pathways, which are super important. Telomere length testing, that's a marker for cellular aging.
We hear about telomeres a lot in longevity circles.
We do. And cellular nutrition assays, checking nutrient levels right down at the cellular level, and your antioxidant capacity. It gets very granular.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. DNA, genetic testing. This is looking at the actual code you were born with,
Yeah.
Your predispositions.
Exactly. And companies are getting better at interpreting that code. The DNA company is mentioned for trying to really connect your genetic setup to your biochemistry based on analyzing thousands of profiles.
So going beyond just listening genes.
Right. And Gene Food is another example. They use DNA data to give personalized advice on diet, lifestyle, exercise. They even rate their content with a science grade for validity. Good Cell also apparently offers genetic risk analysis.
So it's like reading the body's fundamental recipe book. See what ingredients you have, potential weak spots maybe.
Yeah, but just having a recipe doesn't mean it's being cooked, right? Or how loudly it's being read.
Ah, good point. Which leads us where?
To epigenetic testing. This is a really fascinating area. It's about changes in how your genes are expressed, but crucially, without changing the underlying DNA sequence itself.
Okay, this is the DNA methylation stuff. Little chemical tags turning genes up or down like dimmer switches.
Exactly that. Methyl groups attaching or detaching. And the really powerful thing the sources emphasize is that this whole process is heavily influenced by external factors,
Like what?
like your sleep, smoking, stress, your environment, and maybe most importantly, your diet. It's incredibly dynamic.
So it's not fixed.
Not at all, which is why it's a key basis for some of these biological age tests. True Diagnostics' TrueAge is mentioned. They look at these methylation patterns to measure things like your pace of aging.
Pace of aging, like how fast you're aging.
Yeah, exactly. And telomere length, again, immune cell types, things like that. The real value, the sources suggest, is getting that objective biological age number and then tracking it. See how your diet changes, supplements, lifestyle shifts are actually moving the needle over time.
That's powerful. Being able to quantify the impact of your efforts. Insight Tracker is mentioned here too.
Yes, Insight Tracker also incorporates epigenetic insights into their platform.
Okay, let's switch gears again. The gut microbiome. This sounds huge.
It is. It's this incredible ecosystem inside us. Trillions of microorganisms. Bacteria, fungi, viruses.
Trillions.
Trillions living in and on us. One source even calls it an additional organ.
An additional organ. How big?
Weighing about 4 pounds, apparently, and
Yeah.
its role is massive.
More than just digestion.
Oh, way more. The sources point to its role in protecting us from pathogens, helping our immune system develop, producing vitamins, and even influencing things like serotonin production.
Serotonin, like related to mood.
Exactly. Linked to happiness, mood regulation. But the flip side is, processed foods, sugary diets, they can feed the less beneficial microbes, and those are potentially linked to chronic problems.
So, microbiome testing.
Mhm.
How does that work? Looking at poop samples.
Essentially, yes. Analyzing a fecal sample to see who's living in there, how diverse the community is, and sometimes what they're actually doing. Viome is one company mentioned. They use RNA sequencing, which looks at the active microorganisms, not just who's present.
Active, meaning what they're producing or consuming.
Precisely. And based on that, they give you recommendations, specific superfoods, foods to avoid, maybe supplements, tailored to your active microbial profile.
Interesting. And Zoe is another big name.
Yes, Zoe, co-founded by Tim Spector and others, they look at metabolic health, microbiome, and genetics together. One of the key insights from their research highlighted in the sources is pretty amazing. Even identical twins with the same genes can react totally differently to the same food,
Really? Why?
largely down to their unique microbiomes and metabolic responses. It really underscores individuality beyond just genetics.
So how does their test work?
It's quite involved. You eat specific muffins, wear a continuous glucose monitor for a bit, provide that stool sample. They analyze it using something called shotgun metagenomics, and then you get this personalized report, an app that scores foods for you, and even coaching.
Wow. So the big takeaway for microbiome testing is
Understanding your unique gut community gives you this incredible lever for your health. You see your diversity, compare it, understand links to aging or symptoms, and get specific dietary advice to feed your beneficial microbes.
and if things are out of balance, what kind of symptoms might show up?
Well, the obvious GI issues, of course, but also things like poor immunity, trouble absorbing nutrients, brain fog, mood issues, maybe even faster aging. It's really connected.
Beyond those big ones, labs, genetics, epigenetics, microbiome,
Yeah.
did the sources mention other specific tests?
Yeah, briefly. Telomere length came up again, naturally. Also markers for cellular senescence, those zombie cells. NAD plus levels, which are crucial for energy and repair. Glycan testing.
Glycans? What are those?
There are complex sugar structures on proteins. They change with age and disease state, so testing them gives another angle on biological aging. And functionality tests, like something called the age meter. Companies like Ginfinity offer some of these more niche longevity markers.
Okay, wow. That is a lot of different data streams. Blood, genes, gene expression, gut bugs, aging markers. The real magic, though, must be in putting it all together, right? Connecting those dots.
That's exactly where things get really powerful and exciting. Integration is key. Insight Tracker comes up again as a prime example here. They combine blood results, some DNA insights, and data from fitness trackers like your Garmin watch.
Fitness trackers, like steps and heart rate.
More than that, sleep stages, resting heart rate variability, those kinds of detailed metrics. The whole point is to build these ultra-personalized action plans using data from all those different sources.
Can you give an example of how that works?
Yeah, the sources had a good one. Say your Garmin shows you consistently get poor deep sleep, and maybe your DNA report flags a gene related to magnesium utilization, and your blood test shows your magnesium levels are actually low.
Okay, 3 data points aligning.
Right. So the system connects those dots and might strongly recommend, say, trying a magnesium supplement or focusing on magnesium-rich foods specifically timed around sleep.
I see. It builds a much stronger case for that specific intervention.
Exactly. The sources call this kind of multi-data approach unlocking the gold standard for health analytics. It gives a much more complete picture.
That sounds like it fits into that P4 medicine idea. Predictive, personalized.
Predictive, personalized, preventive, and participatory. Yes. It's really enabled by being able to measure and analyze these huge sets of biomarkers, the omics data over time, and you need algorithms, automation to make sense of it all at scale.
So other companies are doing this kind of integration too.
Definitely. Health Revival Partners is mentioned for using a multi-omic approach, often starting with DNA methylation. They have something called the Chronic Disease Temperature Panel CDT.
Chronic disease temperature, we heard that earlier.
Yeah. It uses a patented AI algorithm, apparently developed with insights from Harvard and MIT research. It looks at 55 different biomarkers to assess your current chronic health state and predict future risks.
And the key insight there.
That every single one of those 55 markers is linked to early mortality risk, but also, importantly, is potentially improvable. It's designed to help uncover the root causes driving your specific risks.
Okay. Now, the sources also mentioned a specific panel from Health Revival Partners related to COVID and the vaccine spike protein. How do they frame that?
Right. The sources described it impartially, stating that this test assesses certain risk markers associated with both the virus itself and the spike protein from the vaccine.
What kind of markers?
Things related to clotting, like D-dimer and fibrinogen, inflammation markers like ESR, markers of tissue damage like troponin, and others.
And the point of testing for these?
And the point made in the sources is that these are markers that can potentially be modified. So the testing aims to identify if risks are elevated and then offer a path to potentially reduce those risks through specific protocols.
Protocols meaning?
Could be natural approaches or pharmaceutical ones, depending on the findings. It was framed as making tests that were used, say, in Harvard Medical School for severe COVID patients more widely available. And if risks show up, they offer guidance based on published protocols.
Got it. Okay, another integrated metric mentioned was inflammatory age, or IAGE, from Edifice Health.
Yes, IAGE. That's a different kind of metric. Based on AI analyzing immune markers from a standard blood test, it's designed to predict your risk for various chronic illnesses by quantifying systemic chronic inflammation, or SCI.
SCI, systemic chronic inflammation. How is that different from, like, twisting your ankle?
Good question. Acute inflammation, like a sprain, is short-term, part of healing. SCI is different. It's this low-grade, persistent inflammation simmering in the background, often driven by lifestyle factors, diet, stress, environmental toxins.
Wait, it's bad because...
Because over time, it silently damages tissues and organs, and it's thought to be a major driver of most age-related diseases. So IAGE gives you a score reflecting the level of this chronic inflammation and the overall health of your immune system.
And how do you interpret the IAGE score?
The sources use a graph concept. If your IAGE is higher than your actual chronological age, you might be on a faster track towards age-related problems.
Biologically older than your years in terms of inflammation?
Exactly. But if your IAGE is lower than your chronological age, that suggests you're biologically younger from an inflammatory perspective, potentially healthier.
And all this biomarker data is increasingly connected to wearables, right?
Yeah.
Watches, rings.
Absolutely. Garmin, Apple Watch, Fitbit, Oura Ring, Whoop, they all collect relevant data. Plus, things like continuous glucose monitors, CGMs like NutriSense, Dexcom, Freestyle Libre.
CGMs seem to be getting really popular.
They are, and even non-wearables like specific sleep trackers or devices like iHeart that measure vascular stiffness or Lumen for metabolic tracking. All these provide streams of data that can be integrated with or provide context for the biomarker tests.
Which brings us to the really crucial part. Okay, you have all this data. Now what? From data to action.
Exactly. This isn't just about collecting numbers. It's about using the insights.
So personalized nutrition seems like a big one. Tailoring diet based on
your genetics, maybe from Gene Food or the DNA company, or based on your specific gut microbiome analysis from Viome or Zoe, or avoiding specific food triggers identified by something like the OutCat test from Cell Science Systems.
And lifestyle changes, too.
Definitely. Integrated recommendations, like we saw with Inside Tracker, combining tracker data with blood work, or Zoe offering coaching alongside the app.
And the ability to track things over time must be key.
Hugely important. That longitudinal analysis, seeing how your markers change month after month, year after year, that's how you know if what you're doing is actually working for your body.
Seeing those trends.
Right. Are things moving in the right direction? Are you seeing those trends toward normalcy, as one study put it? Or does something need more attention?
It also sounds like it helps you dig deeper, beyond just symptoms.
Yes, trying to identify potential root causes of chronic disease risks, using tools like that chronic disease temperature panel to guide the investigation.
And you mentioned something about biobanking, storing cells.
Yeah, that was an interesting one from Good Cell. Their service includes storing your healthy cells, DNA, plasma now, for potential use in future cell-based therapies down the road.
Future therapies.
Right. The sources mention the FDA predicts more approvals in this area. So Good Cell frames it as a kind of personalized biological investment for your future self.
That's pretty forward thinking. Now, interpreting all this data methylation patterns, microbiome diversity sounds complex.
It can be, which is why many of these services include expert consultations. Health Revival Partners, True Diagnostic, Good Cell, Zoe, they often have experts help you understand your results and build that actionable plan. You're not usually left alone with raw data.
Okay, so let's zoom out. So what? Why should someone listening really care about all this?
Well, fundamentally, it represents a shift from healthcare being reactive and generic to being proactive, deeply personalized, and actually measurable.
And it might become more mainstream. You mentioned something about insurance.
Yeah, one source touched on an Insurance 2030 vision. The idea that biological age, maybe tracked by wearables and biomarkers, could potentially influence insurance premiums or rewards in the future. They cited current examples like John Hancock's Vitality Age program or insurers covering Inside Tracker tests.
So knowing your numbers could have real-world financial implications eventually, not just health ones.
It's a possibility that's being explored. It hints at a future where this kind of tracking is much more integrated into our lives.
And there was that power of one idea from Health Revival Partners.
Right. That speaks to the body's amazing resilience, its capacity to heal if we give it the right support and information. It emphasizes that identifying risks and root causes through measurement empowers you to take action. Often through dedication and lifestyle changes, the source used the phrase not medication in that context, emphasizing lifestyle first.
But acknowledging medicine has its place.
Exactly. Acknowledging that sometimes pharmaceutical interventions might be necessary, like if specific clotting risks are very high. It's about using the right tool for the job, informed by data.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. Biomarker testing and tracking. It's evolving into this really sophisticated platform. It pulls together data from blood, DNA, epigenetics, the microbiome, activity trackers,
A whole range of inputs.
to give you this incredibly detailed snapshot of your health now, predict risks before they become problems,
Yeah.
and create these personalized, actionable plans for, well, better wellness, longer health span, maybe even turning back the clock on some biological aging markers.
Yeah, the core message seems to be your health isn't some unknowable mystery. It's a complex system, yes, but it's increasingly measurable.
And measurable means manageable.
Exactly. Once you can measure it, you gain the power to manage it, to optimize it.
We certainly covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive. It's a complex world, but hopefully breaking it down like this gives you, the listener, a real shortcut to understanding the potential here. Moving beyond generic advice to something truly personalized.
Definitely. And maybe one final thought to leave people with, drawing from the sources. Consider that idea of your gut microbiome again, not just gut bugs, but essentially an additional organ weighing 4 pounds. Think about that. 4 pounds of living organisms inside you, profoundly influencing your immune system, your nutrient absorption, your brain, your mood, your aging process.
An entire organ we're just starting to really understand and measure.
Exactly. Testing gives you a window into that 4-pound organ. So the question is, what does it really mean to treat your body as the complex, measurable system it is? Especially when a part of it that significant has been mostly invisible. What could understanding and maybe optimizing that 4-pound organ unlock for your health?